Everybody ready?
Yo.
All right, here we go. Good evening, and thanks for joining us for another one of our panel discussions. Let's talk Bridging the Divide. Tonight's program is Trailblazers Among Us. And what a group of women you see right here that we have assembled for you tonight as we commemorate and celebrate Women's History Month. I'm Rachel Platt, the Director of Community Engagement at the Frazier History Museum. And tonight I am thrilled to have my sister as my co-moderator. We're talking about Pam Platt. She is an editor, a writer, and someone who blazed the trail in our family as a journalist. Pam?
So, what is a trailblazer? A dictionary definition will say someone who is a pioneer or someone who's considered a first in their area of expertise. As leaders, they point the way, take the risks, and change the environment. Poet Muriel Strode wrote, "I will not follow where the path may lead, but I will go where there is no path, and I will leave a trail." All the women on our panel tonight have done that, blazed a trail in the legal system, the business community, politics, or by rowing across the Atlantic Ocean.
Wonder who that was. Tori Murden McClure is on our panel tonight, the first woman and first American to row solo across the Atlantic.
We also have the Honorable Denise Clayton, the first Black woman to serve as Chief Judge of the Kentucky Court of Appeals.
We also have Elmer Lucille Allen, the first Black chemist at Brown-Forman, hired in 1966. Whoop, whoop.
Dolores Delahanty, a founding member of the National Women's Political Caucus.
And last but certainly not least, we have Tina Ward-Pugh, the first openly gay lawmaker in the state of Kentucky. So we want to let you know in our audience, if you have questions for our Trailblazers, we want you to enter them in the chat feature or the Q&A section. If you're watching by Facebook, you can put it in the comments section. We'll get the chat feature on momentarily. And before Pam and I jump into our questions with these Trailblazers, we also have another special guest tonight. We have opening remarks from our sponsor, Fifth Third Bank. And for that, we are going to turn to Kim Halbauer, who happens to be a Trailblazer herself, the first female president of Fifth Third Bank in Kentucky. And Kim has some opening remarks for us. So Kim, you take it away.
Thank you, Rachel, and good evening. Welcome to Bridging the Divide, Trailblazers Among Us. I'm Kim Halbauer, Regional President of Fifth Third Bank, and I'm excited to be a part of the conversation today and the opportunity to celebrate Women's History Month. It's a great honor to be here with all of you and for Fifth Third Bank to be the title sponsor. As a woman who has faced harsh realities and great opportunities of climbing the corporate ladder, my journey is not unlike most women's. That's why our conversations like this are so important. It's our job to lift, support, and advocate for each other to continue to promote the vital contributions women make. While I'm new to Louisville, I've been with Fifth Third for over 30 years in our Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati market in a variety of leadership roles. I started at the bank as a teller and saw an opportunity to make a difference. It's here where I discovered my passion for change in leadership. Along the way, I worked in multiple areas, including commercial banking, consumer banking, wealth and asset management. And the journey wasn't always easy, but it was filled with excitement and the opportunity for change. The opportunity to help create a different future for me and for others throughout the bank. One of the things that I'm proud of and very passionate about is my commitment and involvement to the communities in which I live and serve. It's here where we create change, make a difference, and use our time, talent, and treasure to change our futures and change the outcomes of people's lives. Like most of you, I've never quite had enough time in the day to accomplish all that I'd like to do. I try to be committed to the moment of time that I'm in and do the best I can for whoever that's in that moment. I've never really thought of myself as a trailblazer in the past. However, as I think today, I realize that we are all trailblazers in our own right. And the thing that encourages me is that the great speakers you'll hear from tonight have cleared a path, and we all have a responsibility to deepen and widen that path. We together are all trailblazers. For me, part of that trailblazing is done in two ways. A and E, you know, the two most important letters of the alphabet, attitude and effort. It's amazing how much you can accomplish with a little A and E. Fifth Third Bank has been in this community for over 27 years, providing banking and financial services to improve the lives in all of the markets we serve. And here's what we know. Together we make a difference, and together we can drive change. We believe our actions, not just our words, must reflect our commitment to be part of the solution so that we can inspire positive change within our workplace and in our communities. That's what tonight is all about, positive change and creating solutions for our future. A lack of women leaders at the top isn't always attributed to the lack of female talent. And breaking the line of succession requires embracing the spirit of diversity, reversing stereotypes, and creating the future we all want to see. The women highlighted here tonight are inspiring examples who have done just that. Women who broke barriers, women who blaze trails and create opportunities for themselves and for others. They're courageous, diverse, and driven. These women are extraordinary. Thank you for being here tonight and honoring the journey that women make every day. On behalf of Fifth Third Bank, I challenge each of you to listen, learn, and reflect on how you can continue to blaze their trail or start your own. Enjoy the show.
Thank you, Kim. And Tori says Fifth Third Bank was one of her sponsors when she rode across the Atlantic.
Thank you, Tori.
Yeah, we wanted to mention that. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Kim. And I know you're going to join with the audience. So we hope you have some questions later. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. And
thank you for having us. And I can't wait to hear all of the great stories from all of you.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And want to let people know later in the program, we're going to get into some statistics surrounding women. But I have to wonder if the women who join us tonight ever thought of themselves as trailblazers as they were making their most important mark.
So let's turn to our panel and have them talk about their marks. Do they think they're trailblazers? And were they thinking about it at the time? Let's start with Elmer Lucille Allen, the first Black chemist at Brown-Forman. Did you realize, Elmer Lucille, what a big deal it was at the time in 1966 when you took that job?
When I took that job, I had no idea that I would be there 31 years. And to think I was in my 30s, and I give credit, I see Tori McClure over there, but I give my credit to Nazareth College, where I graduated with a degree in chemistry, never knowing what I was going to be. And that's the only field that I've ever worked in. And when I went to work there were no women in like vice presidents. They were all secretaries. And I did not realize that me being there made a difference also. And that you always have to be yourself, speak to everybody, and let everybody know that here I am, I'm here to do a job, and we're all going to get along. And that's what you have to do today.
Yeah.
And Nazareth became Spalding. Just gotta say that.
Well, Elmer Lucille, did you feel alone?
Well, no, I never feel alone in a crowd. I feel like you have to make your community. And that's what I did. There were four ladies and the rest were men, in the lab. And we all just got along. And I remember that this one lady, her husband died, and I went to the wake. And she was so surprised. But when you're in a community, you always support your fellow worker. Mm-hmm. And that's still what I do here in Louisville now.
That sounds like great advice. Build your own community.
Yes.
I love that. All right, Judge Clayton, let's turn to you. The first Black woman to serve as Chief Judge of the Kentucky Court of Appeals. I love this. I found this out about you as we did a story together not too long ago. When you thought about the legal profession, I don't think it's what you started out in, but it really started with a picket at your friend's house. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, I was probably 9, 10 years old, and my friend had decided to tell a joke that had a kind of a play on words, but a curse word in it. And she was punished for it. And I thought it was unfair because adults cursed all the time. I didn't see why that was a big deal. So I just did a little picketing. So the grown-ups came out to look at me and laugh, and nothing changed. I mean, everybody got punished, but I made my statement.
Let me ask you, because I do think it's interesting. Did you know you were blazing a trail at the time when you were sworn in? I mean, did that moment feel heavy? Did you realize it? Did you embrace it?
No, I really didn't think really about the trailblazing. A matter of fact, I received the Justice William McInerney Trailblazer Award from the Bar Association a few years ago. And my oldest son said to me, "Mom, did you really blaze a trail, or did you just walk on a path that somebody else created?" And of course, I initially thought I should have never encouraged him to speak. But beyond that, I thought he had a good point, because people have come before me. In 1939, the first Black woman became a judge in New York. And I didn't become a judge until 1996. And her name was Jane Bowlin. And she was told, there is no career for a woman, much less a colored woman. And interestingly enough, when I started law school, one of the questions posed to me was, it's really nice that you're in law school, but exactly what does a colored woman lawyer do? So it was, it just took Kentucky a while to move ahead, I think. But so I don't really think about the Trailblazer. I understand that other people have done things. Some individuals we've forgotten about, never knew about. And there are people out there who have really started to show the way.
It is a humble bunch here tonight. Pam, you go ahead now.
Sure. Dolores Delahanty, you were a founding member of the National Political Women's Caucus. What made you decide this was what you wanted to, this was where you wanted to be, this was your calling, this is what you wanted to do? Tell us what year that was and how many other women were doing the work at that time.
Well, it was in 1968, I guess, and my concern was the issue of women in politics and women running for office, and it was pretty tough. There were not that many women candidates. We were the ones that were in the background, licking stamps and mailing information and so on. Women were really not running for office. There were a few, but not as many as there should have been at that time. So I've always been concerned about, you can sit on boards, you can lick envelopes, you can do all the mailings, but women at the time were really not running for office in the numbers that we see today. And I just feel so good about that. I've got 4 sons and a daughter, and my sons are, I think, have been with me all the way, because they have really good, strong mates, and it's important.
Yeah. When did you know that your early efforts were reaping some benefits?
Well, I think the first real important milestone for me was at a Democratic convention in 72. And I introduced a motion that the Democrats would support the Equal Rights Amendment. And I got a lot of catcalls from the men in the audience, I have to tell you that. But at any rate, we did get the motion passed for the Democratic convention to support the Equal Rights Amendment. And that was the first kind of victory as far as I was concerned.
Very good. Thank you, Dolores.
All right, Tina Ward-Pugh, you became the first openly gay lawmaker in the state of Kentucky. It was in your run for Board of Aldermen in 1998. Let's talk about that responsibility and what made you decide at the time to be open about it.
Well, thank you for having me be a part of this and all these wonderful and inspiring women. When I finally came out to myself and to the community, it wasn't in a big and bold and splashy way. I just never have worn my feelings or my, anything on my sleeve necessarily. And so, it was kind of quietly known. But really, it was in the fall, Alicia Pedrera happened. She got fired from the Baptist home out Shelbyville Road. And Matthew Shepard was pinned on across on the fence, and it was the country was bubbling over, in pain, and I just couldn't not answer the question outright anymore. Not that it was coming to me, because as I said, I think most people appreciate authenticity, and they appreciate honesty. And so I never dodged the question, but it wasn't, I wasn't running because I was gay or that I had some special something to bring, although I do believe my experience has helped me understand other marginalized people's struggle, if you will.
Let me ask you, was there pushback? Was there support? And how did you handle pushback?
There was really, really strong support. And it's interesting, of course, I had it from the fairness community. And I had support in so many ways I didn't realize it. For instance, one evening after Board of Aldermen, when I was Scotty Green's legislative assistant, and Margaret hadn't left town yet, there was a street blockage or blockade, people sitting in the streets in front of City Hall. And, I wasn't thinking about running for office. I was thinking about, I need to be there with my people. I'm an advocate. I'm, a hellraiser. That's who I am. And somebody gently touches me on the back of the shoulder before I step off the curb, and they whispered in my ear, you can't do that now that you're considering running for office. And we need to think about that as well as your passion. And I think it was helpful for me at the time. And the truth is, our community wasn't where it is today. I didn't think at all about being a trailblazer or what I was doing. I just wanted to serve the community.
And still do. All right, Pam.
Okay, thank you. Tori, the first woman and the first American to row solo across the Atlantic. You'd achieved other feats as well. What was your initial drive in wanting to do that? What was your mindset?
There are all sorts of complicated answers for that, but I never really thought of myself as a trailblazer. The word leader and the word trailblazer have different roots. Leader is Indo-European. The phrase "li" means path. The "der" means finder. And for a trailblazer, you're creating a path. When I skied to the South Pole 10 years before I rode across the ocean, we were literally walking where no one had walked in the last 100,000 years. And every morning I led off for an hour and a half each day. And I was very proud of having the first segment to lead each day, because each morning I thought, no one has walked here before. No one has walked here before. But when I think about the women on the screen here, I think about the more important parts, because I've said to young people for decades, it doesn't matter if a woman's rowed across the ocean. It doesn't matter if a woman skied to the South Pole. What matters is the pick and shovel work it takes to make a difference in this world. And those are the trailblazers we see around this screen.
Mm-hmm. I can't help but ask you, though, what did it feel like to know that you were walking where nobody had been for 100,000 years? Was that something that you sort of carried with you, or did you just want to get where it wasn't quite so cold
Well,
after those steps?
You can't leave footprints on the ocean. And the reality is your footprints don't last very long in the Antarctic either.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right, so we wanted to ask a couple of other questions in just a second, but I wanted to talk about trailblazers. When Pam and I were growing up, I would say as a young girl, there are two people who come to mind for me. Pam and I share the first one. Our first shared heroine would be Amelia Earhart. It happened when I read a book about her as a young girl in elementary school. And Pam found this quote by her: "Women, like men, should try to do the impossible. And when they fail, their failure should be a challenge to others." The other woman I also remember is Shirley Chisholm, who was the first African-American woman in Congress, the first woman in African-American to seek the nomination of president. And one of her terrific quotes that we just love, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring in a folding chair.
I really love that quote. I think it's fabulous. In addition to Amelia Earhart, which Rachel shared with me, and I should note that our dad was a pilot, so we were kind of interested in that story. I was a voracious reader as a kid, and I had another heroine growing up. My second heroine would be Nancy Drew. And I love this quote. Ned said, "Nancy Drew is the best girl detective in the whole world." "Don't you believe him?" Nancy said quickly. "I have solved some mysteries, I'll admit, and I enjoy it, but I'm sure there are many other girls who could do the same." That from author Carolyn Keene on the unforgettable Nancy Drew. And I still have a couple of books, Nancy Drew books, that my mother read when in the 1930s. I have a couple of those copies. Anyway, so we'd like to know who inspired each of you and the traits it takes to be a trailblazer or a pathfinder. We'll start with you, Tori.
Well, I've had so many great mentors along the way. In this past year, I've been thinking about the great Black mentors I have had and how lucky I have been to have them. Ruth Simmons was the first African-American to lead one of the Ivy Leagues. She led Brown University, but prior to that, she was the president at Smith College, my alma mater, and I served on the board of trustees. And it was Ruth actually who convinced me to go into higher ed leadership. And she was a magical person. And the other person who was a great mentor to me was Muhammad Ali. As many of you know, I worked for Muhammad between my unsuccessful row across the ocean and my successful row. But I do have to swing back to Amelia Earhart because these two very clever people have written an amazing musical based on my book. And Amelia Earhart has a cameo appearance in that musical, as does Muhammad Ali. So,
all right, very good. What we hope to see that musical at least at some point here. All right, Tina, let's turn to you now. Who inspired you and the traits you think it takes to be a trailblazer or a pathfinder or whatever you want to call it?
Well, so who comes to my mind initially, because I played, I was an athlete growing up, is Billie Jean King. I mean, it changed my world and my life to see her accomplish what she did, and then just in general. I mean, I didn't wake up until I moved here to go to seminary, and when I did, I had strong trailblazing women all around me. I include among them Dolores Delahanty, who was a social worker who was active on the board and in the Coalition for the Homeless. You know, I was reared by Sue Speed and by Susie Post. I mean, I didn't have any chance with the three of them to become anything other than a housing advocate and a women's advocate and a community advocate and a servant. And so those really are some of the local folks. I will also include, of course, Shirley Chisholm, Hillary Clinton, and now, of course, the most recent one is Kamala Harris.
Yes.
She's not the first. She might be the first, but she won't be the last.
Dolores, how about you?
Well, I have to point to Eleanor Roosevelt. I think she was a heroic woman, did so much for everyone in during those terrible days of coming out of a depression. So I'd have to say she was truly an inspiration. I think of when I really jumped into the Women's Political Caucus, I have to admire Bella Abzug. She could be a pain in the neck. But she was great. I mean, she really pushed people to move into the political arena, and I really admired her.
All right, Judge Clayton, how about you? Who provided you that inspiration and some of the traits you see?
Really, my parents. My parents were the ones who really encouraged me and inspired me to do things. And the overall community, you know, I grew up in Louisville when I was younger, it was a segregated, very segregated community. And that community nurtured me and protected me and encouraged me when maybe the larger community had no interest either knowing that I existed or doing so. So that was very, their support, their like, do whatever you want to do, don't pay attention to what the reality is, kind of now go forward, was really encouraging to me. And I will also have to say, since both Tina and Dolores are here, that they both helped me initially in my first campaign. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
To have a job.
My honor.
So, but anyway, but no, I think for me, it really starts with my parents.
Very good. Thank you.
Elmer Lucille?
Well, here I am. I would like to say is that when I came along, as you all realize, I grew up in a segregated society, and I went, all the schools that I went to were African Americans until I went to Nazareth College. So I owe everything that I know today from African American teachers. And when you think about African American teachers, Lyman T. Johnson was one of my teachers.
Wow.
And Betty Douglas and Francis Mumford. And you sit down and you think about, my parents didn't finish high school. So I had to depend on the teachers. And so I was inspired by how they dressed, how they attended to you, and that they saw to it that you had to learn. And I look at schools today. I took typing, and that, we didn't have computers in those days. And I took sewing, and I took cooking. And I wanted to, and then when I went to high school, I took all the science courses, took biology, I took chemistry, took physics, zoology, I took all the math courses because they told me that I needed to go to college. And when you talk about going to college, when I graduated from Central High School, which was the only high school African Americans could go to when I graduated in 1949, and I could not go to the University of Louisville. It was segregated, but the University of Louisville had a Black school called Louisville Municipal College. I went there for 2 years, and then that's when I transferred to Nazareth, and that's where I graduated from. And I just give all the credit to the teachers, because you sit down and think about it. Is that where would we be if it was not for the school system? We have to look at the teachers. And what I see now, so many of African American students, they never have a Black teacher. And that's where I got all of my experience from. And they, they were my right and left arm. And so I still believe in that, and like then I took Latin and I took French, but in high school. And so I feel like I had a good, well-rounded education in a segregated school system. Here, and then I went to Nazareth and graduated with a degree in chemistry and math. But I could not get a job when I graduated because there were no jobs for African American women. And so my first job that I had, I went to work as a clerk typist in Indianapolis at Fort Benjamin Harrison. And then I started to be a med tech. And I have to give credit to, I went to work at medical and dental research, and there was an opening at Brown-Forman, and they asked me to apply. And that's how I got my job there in 1966. And so that's my trailblazing. But
Well,
I
great
said,
story.
as a trailblazer, I just make a path for everybody to follow.
But the trajectory changed by teachers. And I think that's important to note. I think we all on this panel probably have a teacher who resonates, who I know who several of mine are, and I'm sure we could all say that about teachers who really did open our eyes to new things without a doubt. I do want to pose a question to our audience. So take a look at this, audience. There is a new report from the World Economic Forum that said this: at the current rate of progress, it will take another blank years to close the gender gap. So is it A, 28 years, B, 58 years, C, 108 years, or D, 168? So audience, go ahead and vote.
I hope it's a B.
All right, let's see what our audience voted.
And while they're voting, you know, when Elmer Lucille finished high school, it wasn't legal to go to, wasn't legal to educate Caucasian or European Americans and African Americans in the same classrooms. The day laws were still in effect when Elmer Lucille Allen graduated from high school. And it wasn't until just a couple of years later that institutions, Spalding, then Nazareth, was the first city institution in Louisville to desegregate, and admitted a third of the next incoming class were Black women. But Brown versus Board of Education and overturning the day laws made it possible. So the history is not that old, because Elmer Lucille, we know, is 27.
All right. And also Elmer Lucille was hoping it was 58 years, but I hate to tell our audience, whoever guessed C is correct. 108 years is the answer, Pam, right?
Yes, 108 years. And I really love the flames under that answer. The biggest gaps to close are in the economic and political power dimensions. And now just a couple of other stats to consider. Might want to keep those flames handy. Although women hold almost 52% of all management and professional level jobs, they lag substantially behind men in terms of their leadership positions. In the legal profession, women are 45% of associates, but only 22.7% of partners and 19% of equity partners.
All right, now to academia. Women have earned the majority of doctorates for 8 consecutive years, but only 32% of full professors and 30% of college presidents. So I guess the question is, what is going on? So Judge Clayton, let's ask you. I don't know the stats for judges when it comes to gender, but why the discrepancy in these numbers, do you think?
I think the discrepancy is due to what we all suspect, and it's a lack of opportunity to advance, the lack of really getting a chance to be included. I think in Kentucky, the proportion of female judges to male judges now is really fairly close to, I just saw this number a couple of weeks ago. It's fairly close to equal, but we still, and I think women actually have made more progress on this than African Americans have. But you have that lack of opportunity. When people have not allowed you to utilize your skills to be your best selves, I think you get that. That's why we have that result. It may also say, which is not really answering your question, but when Elmer and Lucille mentioned about some of the teachers, actually I had one of those teachers, Miss Mumford, and when you said her name, I immediately became scared all over again. It was like a real flashback, because they were some tough teachers. And I have to just say, until I got to college, I went to a predominantly white college. Until I went to college, I didn't know there was a thing called a makeup exam or any of those things, because those teachers required you to really put forth and work, and they didn't really care what your excuse was. You just had to do it. So I certainly understand what you're saying and how important that has been, because they encouraged us, again, even when there was maybe no clear path forward.
Yeah. Okay, so what's going on, Tori and Dolores?
Well, I think one of the things I rue the fact that many women's colleges have become coeducational.
Yeah.
I happen to have gone to a Midwestern women's college, and I think a lot of the ability to occupy back then positions of president of the student council in a women's college, et cetera, prepared a lot of women for the revolution. And I think that it's kind of a shame that we see so much coeducational institutions now instead of these nurturing former, like Spalding, for example, where women were able to learn how to be leaders and got out there and got involved.
Tori?
So I'm going to address the women in higher education. So Title IX, we think of Title IX these days as opening the door for athletics. That was not what it was about. It was about opening the doors to graduate programs because women weren't allowed to go to graduate school. And this was 1972. And so Bernice Sanders was mad that she wasn't admitted to graduate schools. And if you can't go to grad school, you can't be a professor. If you can't go to grad school, you certainly can't be a university president. And, you know, here I sit with 300 graduate hours, but that ability to go to graduate school is what has changed the path for women in higher education. And now, of course, we have 3 women leading the institutions in Louisville right now. It's unusual, but the ability, like my presence in my current role, I think is built on Title IX.
All right, Tina and Elmer Lucille, we want you to weigh in as well.
I just think that we have to keep moving. And when you sit down and think about the path that I have taken, is if it was not for chemistry, I would not be where I am today. And when you think about, I went back to school and graduated in 2002 and got a master's in fine art in ceramics and fiber. And when you think about those 2 subjects, all of those subjects consist of science. And when you think about drinking a glass of water, a bottle of water, you're drinking science because it's hydrogen and oxygen. And you think about eating salt on your food, you have sodium and chloride. So we are actually eating science every day. And when you think about art, everything that you see in the universe is based on art. Everything you make, the circle, the square, the triangle. And I just think that I have benefited. I'm 89 years old. I do computers, I do Zoom, I can do all the things. And it really amazes people that I can do those. But I took my first computer class in 1962. And that's when I did the teletype and things went over the wire. And then I did the punch cards. But then when I went to Brown-Forman, they didn't have computers, but when computers came in, they taught everybody in the lab how to use the computers. And so I give them a lot of credit for what I do today, is that I learned while I was at Brown-Forman. So I just say, thank God that I'm still here. And they have named an award for me, the Elmer Lucille Allen Advocacy Award there. And so I'm very proud of
Congratulations for that.
Yes.
There are many things named after you, Elmer Lucille. On murals, there are going to be statues. We more to come. All right, Tina, you weigh in.
Well, sort of playing off of what Dolores said, really, girls are reared differently from boys and always have been. And not that that's a good or a bad thing, it's just a different thing. And so I think that I just don't think women are naturally pulled as a group. There are individuals who are, but as a group, drawn towards power and drawn toward being the center of the universe, or that their opinion really is what matters at every moment. And so the other obstacle, I think, has been fundraising. You know, women just typically don't tend to want to ask for money to go get a job with, you know, based on, you know, on what platforms we have. But I think that, you know, at the end of the day too, women's attitudes tend to be in negotiating. They tend to be about, they would rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. And that's a whole different mindset from men and how they view power or authority or their own presence. And so I think that the more that girls have opportunities for single-sex schools is a great thing, and something that we shouldn't apologize for. You know, when it's still producing such benefits. I think that's pretty much why it is. And I'm grateful though that has been changing over the last 20 years in particular.
Who wants to weigh in on what Tina just said? Anybody agree, disagree?
Thanks a lot, Rachel.
No, but I thought what you said, 50% of something versus 100% of nothing. I thought that was really a great quote. I just wanted to know if other people feel that way.
And I also agree that most women I know are uncomfortable being the center of attention. And we would use the phrase used in the Charter for Compassion, dethrone yourselves from the center of your world and place another there. I think women have always been doing that. They have children or loved ones. They're always putting someone else first.
Mm-hmm.
And until we sort of steal the throne for ourselves, I think we'll always have to share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. You know, years ago when I was at a meeting, a bar association meeting, and the question was who could run for judge. And this was among a group of African-American lawyers. And so it naturally went to the male to see whether or not they wanted to run. And one of the females said, well, you know, maybe I would want to run. And it was like, well, not really your time yet. And it became very clear that nobody was going to ever crown you. If you wanted it, you're just going to have to take the crown and go with it yourself.
And I think one of the factors that I saw happening was in the late 60s, early 70s, when the Women's Political Caucus was formed. It was a support group that helped train women to run for office. It eliminated many of the barriers that women experience in trying to attain elective office. And I think it's very interesting now because it seems to me that women have a real foothold in terms of elective office that we didn't see prior to the late 60s, early 70s. Things have changed and people simply don't understand how it happened and why it happened.
But it's interesting to me that there are still courses and programs like the one you're describing, Dolores, that go on today for women who want to run for office.
Well, I think that there are very few opportunities to train women to learn how to run for office. And I think that we're seeing more and more solidarity among women in terms of support and financial support, particularly.
Okay. Well,
One thing, Pam, let's do the common traits and then I want to get to the advice real fast. So this is going to be rapid fire on the common traits. Pam, go ahead with that one.
Yes. What common traits would you say you all have here sitting on this panel? Could each of you give us one word as we call on you, or at least close to one word? Dolores, we'll start with you.
Oh dear.
Thank you, Pam.
Strength of purpose.
Okay. Elmer Lucille.
You just have to keep going.
I love Elmer Lucille. Keep on moving. Exactly. I love that. All right, Tina.
Service.
Judge Clayton.
Determined.
And Tori.
Compassion.
Ooh, all good words. I love that.
You all were, okay, now we're really going to switch gears. You all were kind enough to send us pictures of you now and pictures of you then. We're going to call them up one by one, and we want you to look at that younger self. And now in all your wisdom, what would you say to your younger self? Tina, we're going to start with you. And we love looking at your pictures.
Thanks. The Platt sisters, you're on my list now.
I know it. There you go.
What? So this is the thing. On the left was my very first March on Washington, and I'm so grateful that there weren't cameras and videos and stuff back then to record what we were saying, because you know I was straight out of the box there for housing. It was about housing. The next picture is me, my first photo at the board of Aldermen when I was going to be the legislative assistant for Scotty Green, and the latest iteration. What came to my mind though, when you know thinking about what would we say to our younger selves, I just made a couple of notes. The first one, most importantly, is to pay attention. Pay attention. study to understand, not just to make the grade and pass the test. And approach life with an attitude that it's about us and not about me, because our actions and our inactions don't just impact us or myself, they impact everyone who's a part of my network and self. So pay attention and ask questions, because be hungry to learn. I regret not being hungrier and waking up too late, to be honest with you. So wake up, go to work, do good.
I love that. All right, Tori, you sent us several. I think yours are next. And we're going to start, I think, of one of you with a pith helmet. We'll let you explain that one. and these are yours.
I'm waiting to go swimming. I'm waiting for my father to take me swimming, and there I am in my little inner tube with my pith helmet. And then in Africa in my Theodore Roosevelt phase, and then with Muhammad Ali, and then as the president of Spalding rappelling off a building. And I would say to my younger self, do not burn bridges, just loosen the bolts a little each day. I would say roadblocks only block the road. They don't block the path, the water, or the way less traveled. Roadblocks only block the road. And I would say, don't take yourself too seriously because no one else does.
Those are great. Judge Clayton, what would you say to your younger self?
We got to call it up. It's coming.
No, you don't have to.
Yeah, come on. There we go.
There we
I
go.
love this.
Here we go.
Well, to the one with the really big fro, my first thought is my mother asked me to trim my hair and I refused. But this was right after as I was graduating from college. And what I would tell that person is, although again, that person wouldn't listen to me, but what I would tell her is just relax. Because I was very, feeling very responsible, very much like I had to do everything perfectly and in good order. And my parents even told me to relax, and I didn't do it. And that's what I would have told that person. The one in the middle, I would have said, don't worry about your 5-year plan. It's not any good anyway. And of course, to my current self is, it worked out, and I think in part it worked out by just putting one foot in front of another and going forward in whatever way that would lead me.
Very good. All right, Elmer Lucille, we're going to call yours up. And the first one all the way to the left was 1941.
Wow.
When you won a Girl Scout competition for selling cookies. Of course, the second one was at Brown-Forman. And then your lovely picture today. So Elmer Lucille, what would you say to that young woman in the picture?
Well, the first young woman, I did not realize that art was important, during those days. So I drew this, not knowing that I would eventually become an artist. And when you think about when I was a Girl Scout, it was a segregated system at that time. And I went to the one at Presbyterian Community, which is now was Grace Hope then, but then it eventually became the Presbyterian Community Center. And I learned a lot of skills and things, like I say, even if you fail, is that you learn whenever you fail. So you just have to keep on moving. And when you go to the second picture, it's just hard for me to visualize that here I am. I was in my 30s, and this was actually a job that I would have for life. And it has brought me so much pleasure. And when I think about, there wasn't now that they have STEM, they had STEM and now they have STEAM, science, mechanics, engineering, art, and it really is something that I would encourage everybody to at least take at least one science course if they can. But some of the schools aren't really teaching science anymore, I don't think. And when you look at the last picture, that was taken by a young man who was working, who had got his MFA from University of Louisville, and he wanted to take some pictures of me. And that's a picture of me. And I love and you sit down and say, that's me every day. I love wearing earrings and scarves. And my children would tell you, I get up, I get dressed every day, and I put on earrings and a necklace every day. And I just hope that people realize that I'm a community person, and if I can help you in any way, I'm here for you. Thanks so very much.
Thank you, Elmer.
Thank you. And Dolores.
Oh, my
There
goodness.
we go. There we go.
I would say that the most important thing that I can offer to my younger self is to be fearless, to not worry about what others might think. If you are convinced that you're doing the right thing, then make yourself be heard. Become an advocate, because I still think that women suffer from suppression, and I still think we're afraid in certain instances to really take control of our own lives and to contribute to what's going on in society. I think it's important for women to continue to reach out into unexplored opportunities. And I say to them, go for it.
Very good. We've got some questions from the audience now. Patricia is asking, what can women do to climb the ladder faster today? Who wants to take that one on?
You have to start at the bottom. Even if you start out as a secretary, you can learn and then you go up the ladder. So it's nothing you cannot do if you do not try.
Anybody else about how to quickly get up the ladder? Any shortcuts, any tips?
Yeah, it sounds like an educator. Do your homework. Most people don't.
Yeah.
If you're willing to do your homework, it's almost like cheating.
Yes.
Explain that, Tori, because go a little more in depth on that.
Yeah,
Just quickly.
You know, I went to an all-women's college, and they were very clear about, if you want to lead a corporation, prepare yourself, work hard, learn what you need to learn extra. I went to divinity school at Harvard, and the feminism there was very different. It was sort of lie down in front of the bathroom door, wait for someone to step on you and say, you are oppressing me. And I really do think the former is the way to go, to do your homework, to be prepared. And when the opportunity comes, absolutely take it. Go through the door. And women will underrate their capacity, but you'll learn.
Could that also be build your own boat when you row across the Atlantic? I'm just saying. All right, Pam.
Yeah. Okay, this is a question for all of you. I am a female in my 30s, my late 30s. I've never been successful at gauging relationships with other women. And honestly, when the panel was asked about female leaders in their lives, it made me realize that I didn't grow up seeing those strong women anywhere around me. Do you have any ideas for building those connections with other women? Because I feel these relationships are incredibly powerful.
You know, I think often we do have those individuals around us. We may not always see them. And, you know, in addition to what I said about my parents and agreeing with what others have said, one of the persons that encouraged me when I was sometimes depressed when I was in law school, which was frequently actually, was actually a woman there who worked on the janitorial staff. And she would see me looking like I was going to jump out the window, and she would just say, hang in there, honey. We're all happy for you. You know, you can do this. So I think sometimes those people are around us, but maybe you're looking for somebody else, somebody that, you know, maybe has some position or title, but I have found there are a lot of people who will encourage you if you just kind of open yourself up to listen and to observe.
And I do agree, the power of women taking other women in and on, and that support system is really something. Thank you, Denise. Let me ask this one. On TV, ambitious women are portrayed as semi-sociopaths, and all successful women wear four-inch heels and skin-tight dresses. I think these portrayals undermine the success of women. What are your opinions about how women look and act on TV? Anybody?
Well, let me say this. When I went to Brown-Forman, women could not wear pants. You could not wear pants.
Riker.
And when they and then you had to wear a pantsuit. And finally, you went to where you could just wear a pair of pants. But I think that the dress system in this workforce now has gone down. I think women need to dress.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Just briefly, it has changed in my lifetime, and every day I become my mother more and more. And I'm grateful for that, as it turns out, after a certain age. As a person who fought for women to have the right to do whatever it is they want to do, on the one hand, language and dress, portraying women, sometimes I'm offended by it because I was working on other things in another direction. But at some point, I just recognized that, people and generations have to forge their own path of who they are. I'm not comfortable wearing to work what most young people are comfortable in wearing to work. And so I don't wear that to work. And I respect others that do. And I recognize that there has to be some sort of line somewhere that you have to draw in the profession. But I think it's influenced by generations particularly.
Pam?
We have I'm sorry, Tori, go ahead.
And I would say it's not just television. If you read history, show me one queen who gets a fair shake in a history book. So it's not just television. And I agree with the woman who wrote the question that the stereotypes on television are still pretty strong. Whenever I see a tall, physically competent woman on television, I know she's going to be a sociopath.
I think part of the women's movement that emerged in the late 60s was trust other women. It's okay to be friends with another woman. We broke down those barriers that kept us so fearful of relationships that I think that's one of the wonderful things that happened in the 60s, where we as women came together. We shared common concerns, and we decided to organize ourselves politically to attain certain opportunities, let's say. So I think that was one of the positive things that came out of the, quote, so-called women's movement of the 60s and 70s. You could trust other women without being fearful that you would, somehow you would not be able to do so.
All right, Pam, let's do a couple more quick questions and then we'll have our final thoughts.
Yeah, this is a question specifically for Judge Clayton. Women of color are underrepresented in the judicial system. Isn't that lack of representation even worse among prosecutors than among defense attorneys or judges? What impact does that have?
Well, I don't have the numbers, but I would say that that assessment about the lack of female or Black female prosecutors is accurate. I don't think you always see that, at least not here locally. Now, of course, we know on the national stage a very prominent Black female, yes, attorney generals who are doing amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
The judiciary in Kentucky, I think, I'm trying to remember the number, it may be 12 or 13 now, African-American judges, and the majority of those judges are women. So we still not, as a proportion, African-Americans as a proportion of the judiciary, we're still not there, but in terms of the number of Black women who are judges, that now exceeds the number of Black males who are judges. So I have been asked from time to time, why can't we find, enough Black students to go to law school? Why can't we do whatever? I said, you need to think about where you're looking. Where are you looking for people? If you're looking at the places where you go, but they may not be, that may explain why you can't find people. There are people out there who would be able to do the job as a prosecutor or a defense attorney or a judge or a corporate attorney, but you have to go to where individuals are to find those folks.
All right, question I have here, can women have it all? Career, civic involvement, and motherhood. I guess it depends on with each individual what you consider having it all. Does anyone want to weigh in on that with the juggling act of women?
Well, you know, I think you can have it all, but not at the same time.
It has to come in
It's
phases.
exhausting. It's exhausting even just to have a little bit of it, but to have it all is like, you know, too much.
I think you can have it all, but someone's going to pay for it.
Yes.
Well, I feel like I've had it all. I've had a family, I've been a working mother all of my career, and raised good kids, and they all have succeeded. And so I guess I hope I'm not the exception, because I think more and more women feel that there are opportunities and they can handle all these various roles very well.
Do you think that the playing field is more level with that? Because I wondered in the pandemic, we've seen a lot of women have to leave the workforce because of the kids at home. And often it's the women still, you know, with the
Always.
latest studies who are leaving the workforce. Is that getting better? And have you all seen that to be true in light of the pandemic as well?
I have seen that to be true, and I find it troubling, very troubling, because whenever we talk about childcare, we describe it as a women's issue.
That's
It
right.
is not a women's issue. It is a human issue. And if we let it be cast as a women's issue, we are responsible for curtailing women's capacity to go out and be and do.
Well said, Tori.
I would like to say that when I worked at Brown-Forman, I raised 3 children, and I went to school, and I also farmed a Chickasaw Little League back in my so I've been busy, you know, and on Friday I would take one place, then I would make a circle and come back and pick up the others. And so I think you have to learn how to work your schedule to fit. Yeah,
You have to be a plate spinner.
You have to be a multitasker.
Yes.
Multitasker.
you know, but
Elmer Lucille had plates on her hands and feet. She was going off full barrel.
Maybe not sleep.
But you only can do what you want to do. So if you have children that are doing things, you have to support your children, and you have to have a job, and you have to be. And I caught the bus, and no, I didn't have a car. I caught a bus and went to work. Was never late. So I think, you know, you can do whatever you want to do, but you have to have it in your mind to do it.
Yeah, Elmer Lucille did a recent presentation at Spalding, and I asked her what she complained about. And she said, "I never complain. You're promised nothing." And it was such a breath of fresh air for our students to hear don't complain, you know.
Hey, before we wrap up, we're not going to get to all the questions in the audience, but Pam and I did want to ask if any of our panelists have a question for each other. I always like to ask if somebody on this panel, perhaps you haven't met, I assume you all have met, I don't know, but is there something you would want to ask each other?
I'm just glad to be on the panel with all of them.
Okay, so no questions for each other.
I'm stunned by that. All right.
Well, we're going to start wrapping it up here. And there is one quotation we want to leave you with as we get final thoughts from our panelists. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And that's from the great poet, author, and philosopher, Maya Angelou.
So with that said, we want final thoughts from each panelist tonight as we wrap up, about 30 seconds each. Just your final thoughts on this evening. We did have one comment. Let me see if I can get to it real fast. How did you get so many amazing women leaders in one place at one time? Kathy said, thank you. So as we wrap up, knowing that people have been inspired by what you said. So Judge Clayton, we'll start with you, your final thoughts tonight.
Well, I can answer the question how you did it because you really insisted on us doing this. So you and Pam, so thank you so much. And it really is an honor to be on panel with everyone else. And the, I think, encouragement and support that I've gotten from many of you directly and from others just by what you've done. So my thought is, you know, we are, I know we say this, we're all in it together, but we really are. And I think if we have a sense of community, we could accomplish a lot.
Okay, Elmer Lucille.
You have to keep going and never take no for an answer. And you to have a friend, you have to be a friend.
Mhm. Okay, great. Tina?
Pass. Pass.
No, that is not
come on.
allowed on this panel.
Elmer Lucille. Okay.
There is no pass, Tina.
Well, closing thoughts are be authentic, be who you are, be proud of who you are, but always be open to learning and being your better self. Don't be combative and confrontational for no reason. Do it with a purpose. Engage people, ask questions, pick up the phone and or write me an email at the Office for Women and say, I want to get connected with other women in this industry or this place. And I will start making appointments for you, connecting you with who you want to be connected with. And always be responsible for bringing those behind you up with you. It's never about you. You cannot get there by yourself. You got there with help and you need to bring them up behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we didn't allow you to have a pass, because we needed to hear that. So thank you very much. All right, Dolores?
I think you have to start to believe in yourself and to know that you have a voice, and then to seek others. You have to have a value base. You have to operate from something to support philosophically and religiously, and you have to have a sense of moral purpose and have a voice. Be fearless. Get out there.
And Tori?
So, I mean, I'm not sure whether I'm answering the why I joined the panel or the agony of the untold story, but I joined the panel because Rachel Platt invited me, and Rachel was in Guadalupe when I landed that rowboat and was one of the first people in Louisville I remember in that encounter. And she was really very kind to a shaky woman who just got out of a rowboat. So I'll do anything for Rachel Platt. But the agony of the untold story, I think, is true for so many women. It's not really true for me, because as a university president, I get to tell stories all day, every day, whether people want to hear them or not. But that's a show of privilege. That's about power and privilege, and not all women have that. And I do think it truly is an agony of the untold story, particularly the story of pain and tragedy and struggle. And we need to be open to listening to those stories and encourage young people, particularly our students, to say that can't be the only story you tell. Yeah.
I love that. Well, ladies, it has been our honor to be part of this. I know Pam feels the same way. We want to thank you all for joining us tonight in our audience, and a special thanks to Fifth Third for sponsoring tonight's program as well.
And of course, we want to offer a special thanks to all of our panelists. And I want to point out that this was originally scheduled for last year, but because of the pandemic, we couldn't do it in person. We still couldn't do it in person, but we're here tonight sort of in the same place, and they stayed committed to this. So I want to thank them not only for that commitment, but for what they said tonight and what they offered, and for blazing their very impressive trails.
And we're going to keep the conversation going on women as well, because next month, our Let's Talk Bridging the Divide is called Lead Hership. We're going to be talking about what women bring to the table, and is that different from what men bring. Our panelists will be Gretchen Hunt from Emerge Kentucky, Cynthia Napick from Leadership Louisville, two lawmakers, Colonel Pam Stevenson and Samara Hevron, as well as Carolyn Tandy from Texas Roadhouse. That's going to be April 13th from 6 to 7 p.m. My co-moderator will be Renee Shaw from KET, who I adore as well. Thank you again for joining us. I want to thank you, Sis, for doing this with me. I appreciate it. A woman I have long admired, to say the least. We hope you have a wonderful evening, and remember, think of your untold story and what it may be.
And tell it.
Yes. Thank you, ladies, so much. What an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.